for What's in Your Attic to discuss the procedures and benefits of donating papers to an archive. I'm Virginia Ellison. I'm the Director of Archives and Research for the South Carolina Historical Society. I've been with the Society for 8 years, 5 years as the archivist. Joining me today is Karen Stokes, our processing archivist, who's been with the Society for about 20 years, and Molly Silliman, our librarian, who's been with the Historical Society for 6 years. So I expect this session to be about 20 to 30 minutes, and then we can have a question and answer session following. Molly will be monitoring the chat box. She may answer your question quickly, or she may say, this is something maybe we should discuss as a group following the presentation. I'm pretty informal, and please forgive me for this blinding white light above me. I chose the wrong room to talk this morning. So here is a little bit about what we will discuss today, today's agenda. Who is the SCHS? What is an archive? What should I look for in an archive when I'm donating papers? What is the donation process? What happens after I donate materials? And what are the benefits of donating? So if you don't feel that I adequately touched on all those, please feel free to let me know. Caveat, this is my first time doing this presentation. So I'm happy for some constructive criticism, things to add to it, take out that you felt were not important. So why do I feel qualified for discussing this? Who is the SCHS? We were founded in 1855 by a group of prominent South Carolinians here at Otranto Plantation. And on June 28, 1855, they held their first public meeting, and Professor Frederick Porcher proposed, the Society proposes to collect information respecting every portion of our state, to preserve it, and when deemed advisable, to publish it. We've accomplished this through several ways. Our quarterly publications, the South Carolina Historical Magazine that's been around since 1900, and then our care log, which we began publishing in the 1980s, which is our more general interest South Carolina history magazine, a little bit of an easier read. Another way we've accomplished this is through our rich manuscript collection. We were founded in 1855, as I mentioned. We started off with the Henry Lawrence papers, and this is how much we've grown in the past 150 or so years. So we have, and these numbers haven't been updated since I've been here. So, and I know we've added probably about 150 linear feet of material. So there's a lot more material. But manuscript collections, maps, plats, architectural drawings, 90,000 published materials, 50,000 plus visual materials. And we're open to the public. We're a library and archive. So we have about 2,000 researchers come in per year to research within our collection. And we usually have about 100 donations per year, various size, from one letter to multiple collections. So this presentation was developed around my experience with the Historical Society. So one thing is, every transaction, situation, organization is unique, does have some unique qualities when you're donating. So the most important thing to get out of this presentation is feel comfortable calling the archivist and asking. That's what I would like for you to get out of it. So what is an archive? An archive is an organization dedicated to preserving the documentary heritage of a particular group, a city, a province, a state, a business, university, or a community. There's many different types of archives. You know, the Charleston County Public Library has an archive focusing on Charleston history. The South Carolina Department of Archives and History holds all of the official records of the state of South Carolina. We are a private archive, but you also have corporate archives. Coca-Cola, McDonald's, they all have an archive to collect their history. What items are we looking for? various types of items, visual materials like art, photographs, printed materials, books, pamphlets, ephemeral items such as brochures, things that were made to just last for a few minutes, but that do hold a lot of research value. Manuscripts, account ledgers, business records, diaries, correspondence, anything paper-based we are looking for. But we're also looking for other materials as we move into the 21st century. So we do accept films and video and audio, computers and hard drives. We get files through Dropbox and thumb drive. One thing to pay attention to when you are donating something like this to an archive, especially computers, you do need to think about who's using that computer, what type of files are on there. Is your banking information on there? And sit down with the archivist and help them navigate through your computer. There's absolutely ways to extract that personal identification number and information so that it's not available to the public. But these are things that we are accepting these days. It helps when you're a big university and you have, an IT department to help you with this. But archivists are able to navigate these waters. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, excuse me. So notes like this one, if for any reason these old papers are not wanted, please give them to the South Carolina Historical Society. That's not always very common. People inherit papers, find them on the side of the road. Please call before you just throw anything away. You never know what someone has. We get people call, say, I'd like to donate this beautiful rope bed that's been in my family for 300 to 400 years. And I say, well, that's not really in our scope. We're looking for paper, documents, rare books. But it starts the conversation, and I can absolutely refer you to someone else, a house museum or another institution that may be interested if I'm not. So to the meat of this presentation, what should I look for in an archive? So these are some things that we'll be discussing. Is the organization sustainable? Its facilities, accessibility, and a clear mission and collection policy.
Of course we got this.
So is it sustainable? That's an important one. Are you donating to an institution that was just founded? Has the institution been around for a long time? Is it in sound financial state? There's many smaller museums that are founded with good intentions, but they may not have the money there. You may have someone who works there who cares, but there's no budget to properly hold these materials. Who works there? At the Historical Society, we have 3 certified archivists on staff, 3 folks who have masters in library information science. We have the opportunity for professional development. Is this a volunteer-run institution that you're talking to? Do you think that person will be there next year and will it be able to maintain the institutional knowledge necessary? You have a right to ask these questions. If it's a public institution, you'll be able to see their budget. Many nonprofits publish their budget in an annual publication, so you'll be able to see if they have the budget to do what you want done with the materials that you're considering donating. The facilities. So where will the items be stored once you donate them? I've got a picture of our data logger right here, which keeps track of the humidity and the temperature in our storage facility. And we get updates and emails if anything changes too radically in that climate controlled environment. Is it a secure environment? Or can people get in and out easily? You know, here you have to go through 2 locked doors to get into our vault. I met with some folks who were trying to plan an archive in their small town. And what they wanted to do was great, but they had one room where they wanted to store materials, also serve researchers. It didn't have any security measures, and they considering like video on all the time when they had researchers in. They also weren't going to have a staff member in as people were researching. So, you know, someone would have free reign to this room and their documents. And these are things, I mean, they weren't being stupid by any means, but these are things that they weren't aware of that needed to happen to maintain security of the materials. Also a disaster plan. Here in Charleston, we seem to have hurricanes every year. So we have to enact our hurricane procedures. So speak to the folks at the facility to see if they have a disaster plan. What's going to happen? Again, look at the facilities, where they're located. Are they on the top floors? Their roof sound? Are they in the basement? Does the area flood? Do they have plans for, you know, if an event like this happens? Do they have not only a disaster plan, but a recovery plan in case something does happen? Because some things are out of our control. Also, accessibility. I recommend talking to you with your family or organization to see really what's the ultimate goal of what you want to happen with the materials. Is it that you want them just in a safe place? Do you want them made available to researchers? Do you want them on exhibit at all times? Really, what's your ultimate goal? What's going to make y'all happy? You know, we have people call that say, I'd like to donate this portrait and it'll be on exhibit in the fireproof building at all times. Well, unfortunately, we can't always accommodate that. Space is limited, and we can't guarantee that something is going to be on permanent exhibit forever. It may be on exhibit, you know, in one of our rotating exhibits, but it's not necessarily going to be up and prominent at all times. How will it be made accessible? Here we, you know, have our research library, so we make things accessible to researchers. We also try to digitize materials, and we have our museum, which has rotating galleries, so things can be visible to researchers and patrons. When will it be accessible? It is a big question when you're donating to an archive. We get collections in of all different sizes and shapes, and sometimes there's a backlog. So you may want to ask when you donate papers, I would like to donate this, my family's papers. When will they be made ready for researchers? Will it be 6 months? Will it be a year? Will it be 2 or 3 years? Because your backlog is huge. That's definitely a question. If it's something that you want immediately accessible, they may not be able to do that at that time. One thing to note is you can donate an endowment with collections so that they could do that a little bit more quickly. Digitization, that's a question I get asked quite a bit. So I'm going to donate this material and you're going to scan it and make it available online immediately. Well, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. Digitization is a long process. The Historical Society works with the Low Country Digital Library, which feeds into the South Carolina Digital Library, which feeds into the Digital Public Library of America. My goal as the archivist here is to always have an ongoing digitization project, and we've been able to for the past 5 years. But it can take, you know, 2 months to digitize one account journal. You have to scan the material in at a higher resolution. You can't feed it through a scanner, so these are unique materials in fragile condition, so it takes a little more care and time. The quality of the scan we create is usually a very high resolution, so it takes a little bit longer per scan. And also you have to create metadata, which I call the specs of the item. If we just scan materials and put it up there, it's not necessarily discoverable. So we have to create the metadata so folks are able to find it, sometimes transcribe it, and then we work with the Low Country Digital Library to upload that content and manage it online. Another question we get a lot is restrictions. So I'd like to donate these materials to your archive, but I don't want them seen for 30 to 40 years. It's always, if you're uncomfortable about something, it's always a conversation to have with the archivist. That's perfectly fine. Sometimes we cannot accommodate any restrictions due to space constraints, and it just makes things more difficult in the end at times. We have restrictions on, I want to say, 3 collections, reproduction restrictions, where we have to contact the donor each time someone would like a reproduction of an item. And it can be difficult to get in touch with the donor to get approval. And it also just limits things at times. If we're going through a collection and we see something like, hey, these folks are still alive and they may not want this information known right now, we can definitely put a couple of folders in a locked cabinet and say restricted, not available for research use. But many archives and museums do not accept anything with restrictions. But as I mentioned, it's always worth your time to ask. Does the organization that you're considering donating to have a clear mission? This is the mission of the Historical Society: to expand, preserve, and make accessible our collection, and to encourage interest and pride in the history of our state. For us, if it doesn't fit the scope of South Carolina, we don't accept the item. Also, a collecting policy. A collecting policy defines the scope of existing collections and also describes the processes and around deselection or deaccessioning materials, retention, preservation, storage. It also provides guidance for staff and organizations and people interested in making donations. Many collecting institutions will have their collecting policy online on their website or available, so you can check, so you can review it, see if it, if your material fits the scope of their collecting policy. Also kind of what their guidelines on for conservation. We have funds for basic stabilization and rehousing, but many places don't have the funds for a real conservation treatment. So moving on to what is the donation process? It can be very simple. As I mentioned, each situation is unique. So you have the initial consultation by phone, email, in person. Usually for me, it starts off by email or phone, and someone calls and says, hey, I have this item, are you interested? If it's a large collection, the archivist will probably like to come and review it. If it's something small, you can send a picture via email. Then you move into the acquisition transfer, where you meet. This image right here is, I was working with a business who was donating some maps and plats that they had acquired. The deed of gift form, which is one of the most important is the most important aspect of this whole process, and the acknowledgement following the donation. So this is a copy of the deed of gift form for the Historical Society. It's very simple. It can be customized, but it is transferring all rights over to the Historical Society, including copyright. I'm not really going to get into copyright today. You can ask questions, but that is a whole different beast. So you see with the deed of gift, we'll do a description of the material, the donor signs, and the archivist signs, and each person gets a copy of the deed of gift. Without this, we can't do anything. We can't process the materials. There's no reason for us to put any money into the collection. It may sit on a shelf until the archivist or curator can start the abandoned property laws of that state, which vary from state to state and can take 7 to 10 years. I had a lady call probably about 2 months ago, and she wanted to donate some papers, and they were part of her family papers, but she didn't really understand how. And she said, you know, I'm not really comfortable donating these materials or signing something saying that I donated them because I don't know how we acquired them. And you know, she and I went back and forth and discussed it. And I said, I understand, you know, your qualms. Unfortunately, I can't take these materials because they will sit on a shelf and probably require about a week, 2 weeks work of me going through the abandoned property statutes so that we can process the materials. And it was great, a great little collection of a plantation down in Beaufort. And, you know, I explained that we do have families, you know, she probably inherited through a different branch of her family, and she just really didn't understand how it had come in. And after talking about it, she was comfortable signing the deed of gift form and donating the materials to us. So on page 2 of the deed of gift form, we have an encumbrances section and a disposition section for folks to sign. And these are things to look for on the deed of gift. So many archives have people that would like to be handheld through the process. And then there's other people that leave trunks at the door with a signed deed of gift, and they have not been through those trunks at all. And some of those items may be out of scope for our collection or another institution's collection. So the disposition gives us the right to send them to a good home. Now, that doesn't mean we're throwing them in the trash. We're archivists. We like to have wonderful relationships with other archives because we want them to do the same for us. If we're going through a collection and think something's out of scope and the disposition note has been signed, we'll send it there. I sent several things to the Kentucky Historical Society and the Georgia Historical Society just last week. So it doesn't mean we're going to throw things away. It just means we have the right to find another home for it where it would better fit. And I touched on you can add restrictions. You can say if it doesn't fit your collection, you know, please contact the family and we can return the materials. So there's room to customize it. With some families, they don't feel comfortable just having one signature. They may want, you know, several family members to sign the deed of gift. And the same with some organizations. Some churches that have donated their papers have had a member of their board of trustees, the pastor, the church historian. So several people are involved and included in the process. Another question I get a lot is, how much is this worth? That is not a question that we can answer. I can tell you it's research value, that how it'll be great for the researchers coming in or the patrons going through our museum, but I cannot give a value on any of your materials. Sometimes I may say, hey, you may want to have that appraised before you donate it to us. But it's not always obvious to me because I'm not an appraiser. What we can do is provide a list of local appraisers, and we can sign the non-cash charitable contributions form following the appraisal and donation. And then it's up to the donor to get that to either their accountant or used when they file their taxes. We stay completely out of that process, but it is a question we get asked a lot. I get it asked by family members too. They call me and say, well, I know you're familiar with these things, but I'm not. You know, one of our institutional policies is that if you're an employee here, you cannot be a collector. So we don't, I mean, the employees here don't collect rare books or manuscripts because it's a conflict of interest. So what happens after I donate the item? Here is our wonderful processing archivist, Karen Stokes. So after an item is donated, it usually goes to her and she begins the process. So we do some basic stabilization of moving things into acid-free folders and acid-free boxes. These items are not usually found on Amazon if you're trying to store them yourself at home. I definitely recommend going through an archival or museum retail store. And so Karen, depending on the size of a collection, she'll process things from like 1 letter or things up to 60 or 70 boxes. Yeah, the collection I'm showing you right now in this finding aid is about 20 boxes. So what she'll do is go through the material, create a biographical note, try to understand the creator of who collected these items, whether it was their items. She'll write a scope and content note on the finding aid. And a finding aid is just the archival term for an inventory of what's in a collection. You can find them paper-based. Ours are PDF on our website. Many are web pages. And it just helps researchers get things down to the box or folder level when they're doing their research. We have researchers come from all over the world, and they may not need to go through 20 boxes of the Abbeville Merchants records. They may be looking for one specific item in that collection. So it's definitely worth their time for us to process the material down to the folder level. Ultimately, the items will be discoverable in an online catalog. Each institution has their own way of making things discoverable. We work closely with the College of Charleston to add things to the online catalog. It's just a library catalog like you use at your public library, where you can do a keyword search, search by subject, by medium, by person. And always feel free to call and ask if you need any help going through the online catalog. And I made that process seem really easy, but there's a lot of research around that. Karen goes back and confirms the dates of people, the dates of events, tries to put everything in context, and look for what a researcher may be looking for when they're doing, when they're coming in to do research, whether it's social aspects, the historic event, things like that. So ultimately, the benefits of donating materials. One is preservation. You're sending it to a place that's hopefully climate controlled and secured, and will be preserving it for future generations. Two, it's accessible to your descendants. This photo here shows a family reunion event that we hosted several years ago. And they wanted to do, to see some of their family's papers, but also raise money for conservation of the plat that's in that photo, and they did. So we were able to send it to a conservator. Another is to make it accessible to historians, scholars, genealogists, students, and it may fill the gap in the historic record. You may be telling it about an event or a person who's little known and made a big impact. Another thing to consider that I don't think I touched on is that with donations, you can provide an endowment with a collection, whether to get it processed quickly for conservation treatment, for digitization. you can donate money specifically for a project. And I'm sure any institution would be happy to work with you on that, because we're always looking for ways to continue bettering our collection. So here's some references of today's talk. I really got everything from the Society of American Archivists webpage and my experience, but they have all of these materials available on their website to talk you through, you know, the different processes and procedures and best practices. So definitely check out their website. This is our museum. I have to do plugs now, sorry. We're open 10 to 4 Tuesday through Saturday in the historic fireproof building at 100 Meeting Street. We opened 2 years ago. I definitely recommend going through. When we opened 2 years ago, the goal was to ultimately show some of our amazing collection that had been not hidden, but in our vaults for the past 100 years. And this is our research facility. We're located on the 3rd floor of the College of Charleston's Addlestone Library. We are open right now by appointment only. We have about 4 researchers per day. So you can contact us directly if you would like to do any research. These are some of the benefits of joining the South Carolina Historical Society. You get our quarterly publications, access to some of those publications, discounts, access to over 300 museums and historical sites on in the Time Travelers program. And this is the best way to get in touch with the library staff. This email address goes to 3 of us, usually give us 2 or 3 business days to get back to you, especially around the holidays. But feel free to email us at any time, and we'll try to answer your questions, whether it be a reference inquiry or donating, or just any concern that you may have.
All right, Virginia, we had some good questions pop up in the chat that I thought we might go over with everyone. So to answer, let's see, John Worley had asked, if I have correspondence that you might have an interest in, do you need the original or would you be interested in a digital copy? Which is a great question.
That is a great question. We would be more interested in the original. What we could do with the digital copy is make it available to researchers, but we don't have any copyright to it because you would still have the original. So we wouldn't be able to make reproductions for folks or use it in any publications. So we definitely always prefer the original. If it has a lot of research value, sometimes maybe we'll make a copy of it and put it in the vertical file for that family. But we don't usually go through we don't process it or make it available in the online catalog.
Great. Another great question that came up was, are you interested in family Bibles from the late 1800s, even if there are no family notations inside? And will your collections be cohesive with the new IAAM Museum and the Avery Research Center?
Mm-hmm. So no, we generally do not take family Bibles. If there's genealogical materials in them, we would like to get photocopies of those so we can save that information, but we just don't have the space to take family Bibles. Will it be cohesive with the IAM and Avery? Yes. So we've already been speaking with the IAM for the past several years about using some of our materials in their exhibit. They're very familiar with our collection, and we've worked with the director of the Family History Center, Tony Carrier, quite a bit over the past 2 decades. She's given 2 African American genealogy workshops for us and comes in to research our collection quite a bit. Our strengths are not in African American manuscript collection like the Avery's is, because that is their focus. We're always collecting and trying to add materials in our collection. We have the antebellum and records of many of the plantations around South Carolina. So a lot of African American genealogists kind of have to go through the back door of those records to get the genealogy information that they're looking for, bills of sale, the inventory list available on estate records, things like that.
Great. And then could you, maybe there were a couple questions about how the donation process has changed since COVID. And I did mention our quarantine process for newly acquired materials. Just, are we still able to visit a home to help with documents if we're not physically able to come into the archives to kind of go over potential donated materials?
Yes, if you feel comfortable with one of us coming into your home, I'm happy to do that, wearing a mask and sanitizing and social distancing. We have been not spending a lot of time in folks' homes, but going to pick up collections or just quickly review. All transactions are kind of awkward right now since we can't shake hands and, hover over the same amazing letter. But we are still going to pick materials up. And we've been having drop-offs in the loading dock area at the library as well for 1 or 2 items. For larger collections, I have been putting materials in quarantine at the fireproof building, just kind of out of respect for our partnership with the College of Charleston, because they are not accepting at the moment.
Virginia.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Mary Peters. You archived my husband Jack Thompson's papers and manuscripts, which I was very honored to donate. And I'm wondering if you archive interviews and CDs of World War II veterans.
Yes, ma'am, we do. We do have a collection of Low Country, I think from the Jasper County Historical Society. They donated all the oral history interviews that they did for the, I can't remember the name of the book right now. I think it may have been Low Country Veterans in World War II. But we have those oral histories on tape, and we do accept oral histories and audio.
And just call, yes, call your, or email your library regarding that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other questions or anything I didn't touch on or anything anyone would like to discuss?
We did have one other question about if an item is not, doesn't fit in our collecting scope, if it's a physical object, what institutions might take the object?
I mean, I guess it depends on what the object is. I usually refer people to the Charleston Museum, or if it's a large piece of furniture, definitely someone with the Charleston Museum or a house museum that may want to have that item on exhibit. But it depends on what the object is. And I mean, as I've said several times, every situation is unique. No archivist wants you to just toss something out that may have a lot of research value. So feel free to call and ask. And I know everyone's happy to start a conversation and refer you to the right location. That's a lot of what we all do. I get a week on how to save a cemetery, and I, point them in the right direction, explaining that's not us, but here you go. Well, I appreciate you all joining us, and here's our email address. If you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to be here. We're happy to collect materials and answer any reference questions you may have. I think we all enjoy our job, so. Well, enjoy the rest of your morning and hope to see y'all again soon.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you.